I've shared my signs about when it's time to quit a job, but in this video, we're going to share yours. As I normally do, I was perusing the news and I came across a Buzzfeed article about red flags that you should quit your job. And it was all these user-generated comments from a Reddit forum. And so this author on Buzzfeed was kind enough to compile this list. And I started scrolling through it because I have an interest in that sort of thing. And some of them really stood out to me. So I thought it'd be an interesting exercise to walk through some of them and break down why they may or may not be valid reasons why you should want to quit your job. So who knows, you might be in a similar circumstance and some of these might resonate with you. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-related content directly from a corporate recruiter, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You might also want to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content. I did make a pretty detailed video about signs that you should absolutely be thinking about leaving your employer immediately without even a contingency plan in some cases, because there are certain circumstances where you just have to get out and get out immediately. So without further ado, let's head in and read some of your red flags. So recently, John the Zipper asked people on Reddit to share telltale signs that it's time for them to quit their jobs, and all these comments came flooding in. Some of them were pretty interesting. There's a couple here that talk about dreading going into work. Now, I would say dreading going into work is an indicator that you're not in the right career path. Is it reason for immediately quitting a job? Probably not. But if you're dreading going into work because it's the specific employer and not the career type, then maybe it's just not a good match for you at that particular company. However, if it's a deeper career dissatisfaction, then you really need to start looking long and hard at your career choices and whether or not you want to repivot. If you're at the front end of a relatively long career, you have to think, can I stomach this for the next 20, 30, 40 years? If the answer is no, I think you know what you need to do. However, you need to be smart about it. Here's one that says when the paycheck is late or it bounces. Obviously, if the employer can't make payroll, that's probably a big indicator that you should get out and get out immediately, because there's no guarantee you're actually going to get paid on time or even at all. Here's one that says on Thursday, my boss let me know I was going to have to prove I'm worth my barely livable wage. So I'm assuming this is an entry-level position or near entry-level position. And so we're going to have a meeting every day next week to see how I'm going to make the company more money. So literally a meeting every single day to discuss how you're going to make the company more money. I mean, that sounds like a toxic situation. It sounds like they're probably trying to quiet fire you. And obviously the boss does not believe in you. And if it's me and I'm in a situation where I know that my boss doesn't believe in me and is trying to micromanage me to this point, it's a good indicator that you probably don't have a whole lot of a future there. And that's probably a good enough reason for me to update my resume and start looking. But the bigger question is would I quit this job without having another one lined up? And I might see this one play through, because if you're put into a performance improvement plan or a PIP, which essentially this is, and the company goes to make an adverse employment decision, they go and they fire you, then you would most likely qualify for unemployment. So you might as well be looking for a job while you got an active paycheck, and possibly if you do get fired, you could still collect the unemployment. So it's kind of I guess a win-win in that way. This one's near and dear to my heart. When they lay off the nicest, most loyal and experienced person in your department, they told me it was about his salary and nothing more. If they're cutting your costs like that, time to go. It's only going to get worse. And that's 100% the truth. And when you look at this from a free agency perspective, or being the CEO of your career, this is what company loyalty is. The nicest, most loyal, and most experienced person in the department gets cut simply because they have the highest salary. So these companies are coming in and undermining that. All of those years of loyalty, and I'm assuming this person had years of loyalty, but all those years of loyalty are out the door because of a salary decision. So when we look at this from a free agency perspective, this is why we always need to be looking out for ourselves and making the best decisions for us rather than the company. It's not to say that you shouldn't be loyal to an opportunity, but you should be loyal to yourself first and foremost. And obviously, if you're somebody that's left over from a layoff, you've made it through a round or two, and you've looked around and seen how the company has treated or handled the situation with other people, you've got to start to think, if they can do it to them, they can certainly do it to me. And if it's me, I'm probably thinking maybe it's time to update my resume. Do you really want to be with a sinking ship, or one that has demonstrated that they don't have loyalty to hardworking, loyal employees? The next one I want to cover is when I get an offer for more money. And this one is a little bit tricky, because We don't know a lot about this person's background. We don't know what job they're working, how long they've been there, how much they're earning, etc. So there's a lot of reasons why somebody may want to leave for more money. However, the higher paying job isn't always the best opportunity. And sometimes staying in a role that you're paid a little bit less, but you get better experience that's going to set you up better for the future might be the preferable option. So just because somebody's dangling another couple $1,000s in front of you does not automatically mean that that's the best opportunity for you. But if they come and dangle a massive raise in front of you, nobody's going to blame you, but buyer beware. The person who makes the most, like we saw in the previous example, might end up on the layoff list because of that salary. And unfortunately, we have found this one to be true lately with all the tech layoffs, where people went and negotiated themselves massive pay increases only to find out that it was relatively short-lived. Next one is more about mental health, is invasive thoughts about work while at home and off the clock. If you're sitting there worrying about your work, you're worrying about your email, you're worrying about the big meeting, you're worried about your boss potentially chewing you out, you're worried about getting fired on your off days, then that's definitely an indicator that it's probably not a healthy environment for you. And if that's the case, I would definitely think that's a valid reason to update your resume and start looking. Your mental and physical health has to come first, and there's no job out there that is worth putting that at risk. This one says when things don't change, there's no progression in your position, and those with less experience are getting promoted to better positions over ones with experience. Hence the reason why I submitted my request for a layoff. That's interesting. This afternoon. Too many options to stay stagnant. Now, that's obviously a pretty drastic decision to make, especially in a market that may or may not be softening in your area. But in this case, this person felt relatively confident that they could land another job quickly. And if you're working for an employer where you're repeatedly being blocked and you're truly ready to take a promotional opportunity, in other words, you meet all the requirements for the next position, your performance is above standard or you exceed expectations, and you've done all the things necessary, yet for some reason, maybe it's a political game, that you're not being noticed and you're being passed over for promotion after promotion, that is absolutely a reason why you should be updating your resume and finding another opportunity, because you're being blocked there. If you're somebody that wants to advance, I did make a video on this exact topic, and it's called "A Steady Job is Bad for Your Career." People who are getting passed by for promotion end up becoming stagnant and the market passes them by. So you have to act like a free agent, taking the steps necessary to look out for yourself first and foremost. The next one says, when a new person has just been hired and they are making more money than you. Now, this one is pretty common, unfortunately, especially in larger corporations where people will stay in role for a long period of time, because inevitably what happens on the open market is the wages move faster than internally. So people who do hop from job to job to job tend to get those bigger raises because the employers have to compete on the open market. And an astute HR department should be looking at internal compensation and making those decisions. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, I've yet to find an HR department that truly embraces correcting existing people's compensation to really reflect what's going on in the open market. So at best, and internally, if you're staying in the same job, you may get 2, 3, maybe a 4% increase with good performance. At the most, a promotional opportunity might be a 10%, but if you leave on the open market and you jump from job to job to job, you might be looking at 15 or 20% raises each time. And that's why early in your career, maybe that is a strategy that you want to adopt. And you have to be very careful about what it'll do to your resume long-term, because too much job hopping will actually start to hurt you. So use it to your advantage, but use it strategically and don't overdo it. The next one that I'm going to cover is when management changes hands constantly. And I actually have found this to be the truth. When you have leadership teams that come in, they tend to bring their own philosophy, their own people. And this is especially true if it's your boss that's being replaced or potentially your boss's boss. Because what happens is when you're hired in by a certain hiring manager, they have a vision for the role. And at that time, you convince them that you're the best possible fit. So they hired you based on what their vision for the role is. And when the new boss comes in, inevitably, they have a different way of doing things. They have a different vision, and you might not have matched what they were expecting. In that case, you could be behind the 8 ball because you're essentially interviewing on the job. You're not sure what your new boss is even looking for and if you fit that mold. So if you find yourself working under a new leadership team, especially a direct boss, I would be very cautious, pay close attention to the dynamic there, and maybe keep that resume up to date. The next one says, I am out if somebody with authority has anger issues or yells at employees. And this is a self-respect issue. You should never have to work for somebody who verbally abuses you on the job. If it's a senior leader, and even worse, if it's your boss who is doing this, absolutely get out. It's a toxic work environment. There's no saving or salvaging the situation, and there's no benefit to you staying there. The next one's the ever popular when they mention that we're all family here. That is a cringeworthy title. We are not family at work. We are coworkers here for a mutually beneficial arrangement. And when that arrangement is no longer beneficial for either side, somebody's going to make a move, and that doesn't happen in a family. So if you hear an employer suggesting that we are family, be very careful with that, because they're probably trying to manipulate you on some level. We're free agents and we do what's best for us. Hopefully you can see a common trend here. And this next one's kind of a version of quiet hiring, which you may have heard of. And it's when they start giving you more responsibility with a flashy new title, but without any raise in pay. It's usually because they don't want to hire somebody else to do the job, and they want to try to stretch their dollars. If you find yourself in this situation and it's reasonable to do so, maybe ride out this one a little bit to try to get that job title and maybe some bullet points on your resume that will help you land a better job that will actually pay you what you're worth. But don't stick around too long, because we don't want the employer to rebrand us and send us off in a completely different direction, and then we lose control of our careers. The next one is when your boss happens to forget about your planned vacation and wants you to work, especially when it's been discussed months ahead of time. And that's a boss that doesn't honor a work-life balance. So you have to create firm boundaries about what's acceptable to you in the workplace, and that's one I would put my foot down on. Then the last one I want to cover in today's video is when the perks have all just about gone and they're threatening to take the last ones. You have to look at it from this angle. Is the company investing in their employees? Or are they divesting in their employees? And in this case, they're divesting their employees. Are the benefits getting better each year? Are they giving people reasonable wages that keep up with inflation? Are they developing employees and giving them reasonable opportunities for promotion? These are all indicators of a good work culture. And if you're not seeing them in your current job, there's probably not a solid future there. So use the employer for what you need. In other words, get the experience that you need on your resume, and then have an exit strategy to get out. So these are all your reasons, and I think a lot of them are very valid. Some of them we just want to make sure that we're doing them very strategically, but the bottom line is we have to act like a free agent. We have to do what's best for us. And if you find yourself in a toxic situation, a bad boss, or maybe you're not being compensated correctly, you have to take the necessary steps to address it, but just do it in a smart way. So I'm curious, what's your red flags and reasons for leaving your previous jobs? Leave a comment below and let me know. And if you find yourself in a hopeless situation and you're ready to get out, you just don't know how to go about doing it, I actually do specialize in that. I've got a website called alifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks, all from an insider's perspective. And I give you my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. And the first one is called Resume Rocket Fuel, and it's designed to teach you how to write a resume that's going to give you the best chance of getting noticed by those recruiters, ultimately to give you that first round interview. And then once you get your foot in the door, it's up to you to sell yourself throughout each round of the interviewing process. And that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. It's going to give you all the tools, the tips, and the techniques that you need to feel very confident to get through an entire interview process, ultimately to land your dream job and negotiate the best rate for yourself. And if you have an active interview coming up that you want to cram for, check out my 48-hour interview crash course. But if you want to skip the line altogether, you want recruiters to start reaching out to you. And that's where unlocking LinkedIn comes in. It's going to teach you how to use LinkedIn to your advantage so that recruiters start noticing you and then contact you to get you into the interview process. It's also going to teach you how to access some of the best opportunities out there in the hidden job market. So if you're somebody that's struggling and doesn't know how to use LinkedIn, check that course out. Hey, appreciate you watching. Remember, always act like a free agent. We'll see you on the next one.